Welcome to Wicked Majesty. Hello, everybody. This is Keya from Wicked Majesty, and you are listening to Tea and Terror Podcast, the show that entertains with true and fictional stories from beyond the grave for people who love horror. Welcome to another night of terror and classic macabre on the Tea and Terror Podcast. I am your host, Keya Reed. Tonight, brace yourself for the final episode of the Body Snatcher series, as we unravel the curse that binds the tale together in the curse of the Body Snatcher. In the curse of the Body Snatcher, we uncover the supernatural elements that lurk beneath the surface of Stevenson's story, delve into the dark forces that haunt those that disturb the eternal rest of the dead. We'll explore the moral dilemmas faced by the characters, the consequences they suffer, and the fateful climax that awaits them all. Prepare for a bone-chilling conclusion that will leave you questioning the boundaries between life and death. If you are watching from the Wicked Majesty YouTube channel and it's your first time seeing my content, welcome to the Wicked Majesty channel. I post horror stories, gothic tales, and creepypastas that will get your blood rushing and nightmares beyond your imagination. If horror is your thing, then I encourage you to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell for updates on the Body Snatcher series and other videos I post each week. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you very much for watching my videos and subscribing. You definitely help my channel flourish, and I greatly appreciate it. If you are listening to the podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, or SoundCloud, then please share the Tea and Terror podcast with others, add it to your playlist, and subscribe. Thank you all so much.
Toddy hates me. I'm a pretty bad fella myself. Oh yes, Toddy, you do. Hiram, did you ever see the lads play knife? Toddy MacFarlane is the boy. Toddy MacFarlane I call him.
Don't you call me that confounded name.
Hiram, did you ever see the lads play knife? He would like to do that all over my body.
You had better look at the face. You had better look at the face.
MacFarlane, I've put my neck in a halter to oblige you.
The resurrected man, to use a by-name of the period, was not to be deterred by any of the sanctities of customary piety. It was part of his trade to despise and desecrate the scrolls and trumpets of old tombs, the paths worn by feet of worshippers and mourners, and the offerings and the inscriptions of bereaved affection, to rustic neighbourhoods, where love is more than commonly tenacious, and where some bonds of blood or fellowship unite the entire society of a parish. The Body Snatcher, far from being repelled by natural respect, was attracted by the ease and safety of the task. To bodies that had been laid in the earth, in joyful expectation of a far different awakening, there came that hasty, lamplit, terror-haunted resurrection of the spade and mattock. The coffin was forced, the cerements torn, and the melancholy relics, clad in sackcloth after being raddled for hours on moonless byways, were at length exposed to uttermost indignities before a class of gaping boys. Somewhat as two vultures may swoop upon a dying lamb, Fettes and MacFarlane were to be let loose upon a grave in that green and quiet resting place. The wife of a farmer, a woman who had lived for 60 years and had been known for nothing but good butter and a godly conversation, was to be rooted from her grave at midnight and carried, dead and naked, to that faraway city that she had always honoured with her Sunday best. The place besides her family was to be emptied till the crack of doom, her innocent and almost venerable members to be exposed to that last curiosity of the anatomist. Late one afternoon the pair set forth, well wrapped in cloaks and furnished with a formidable bottle. It rained without remission, a cold, dense, lashing rain. Now and again there blew a puff of wind, but these sheets of falling water kept it down. Bottle and all, it was a sad and silent drive as far as Pennacuik, where they were to spend that evening. They stopped once to hide their implements in a thick bush not far from the churchyard, and once again at the Fisher's Tryst to have a toast before the kitchen fire and vary their nips of whisky with a glass of ale. When they reached their journey's end, the gig was housed, the horse was fed and comforted, and the two young doctors in a private room sat down to the best dinner and the best wine the house afforded. The lights, the fire, the beating rain upon the window, the cold, incongruous work that lay before them, added zest to their enjoyment of the meal. With every glass, their cordiality increased. Soon MacFarlane handed a little pile of gold to his companion.
A compliment. Between friends, these little D.D. accommodations ought to fly like pipe lights.
Fettes pocketed the money and applauded the sentiment to the echo.
You are a philosopher. I was an ass till I knew you. You and Keya. Between you, by the Lord Harry. But you'll make a man of me.
Of course we shall. A man? I tell you, it required a man to back me up the other morning.
Well, and why not? It was no affair of mine. There was nothing to gain on the one side but disturbance, and on the other, I could count on your gratitude. Don't you see?
And he slapped his pocket till the gold pieces rang. MacFarlane somehow felt a certain touch of alarm at these unpleasant words. He may have regretted that he had taught his young companion so successfully, but he had no time to interfere, for the other noisily continued in this boastful strain.
The great thing is not to be afraid. Now between you and me, I don't want to hang. That's practical. But for all cant, MacFarlane, I was born with a contempt. Hell, God, devil, right, wrong, sin, crime, and all the old gallery of curiosities. They may frighten boys, but men of the world, like you and me, despise them. Here's to the memory of Grey.
It was by this time growing somewhat late. The gig, according to order, was brought round to the door with both lamps brightly shining, and the young men had to pay their bill and take to the road. They announced that they were bound for Peebles, and drove in that direction till they were clear of the last houses of the town. Then, extinguishing the lamps, returned upon their course, and followed a by-road towards Glencourse. There was no sound but that of their own passage, and the incessant, strident pouring of the rain. It was pitch dark. Here and there a white gate or a white stone in the wall guided them for a short space across the night, but for the most part it was at a foot pace, and almost groping, that they picked their way through that resonant blackness to their solemn and isolated destination. In the sunken woods that traversed the neighbourhood of the burying ground, the last glimmer failed them, and it became necessary to kindle a match and re-illuminate one of the lanterns of the gig. Thus, under the dipping trees and environed by huge and moving shadows, they reached the scene of their unhallowed labours. They were both experienced in such affairs, and powerful with the spade, and they had scarce spent 20 minutes at their task before they were rewarded by a dull rattle on the coffin lid. At that same moment, MacFarlane, having hurt his hand upon a stone, flung it carelessly above his head. The grave, in which they now stood almost to the shoulders, was close to the edge of the plateau of the graveyard, and the gig lamp had been propped, the better to illuminate their labours, against a tree, and on the immediate verge of the steep bank descending to the stream, Chance had taken a sure aim with the stone. Then came a clang of broken glass. Night fell upon them. Sounds alternately dull and ringing announced the bounding of the lantern down the bank, and its occasional collision with the trees. A stone or two, which it had dislodged in its descent, rattled behind it into the profundities of the glen, and then silence, like night, resumed its sway, and they might bend their hearing to its utmost pitch, but naught was to be heard except the rain, now marching to the wind, now steadily falling over miles of open country. They were so nearly at the end of their abhorred task that they judged it wisest to complete it in the dark. The coffin was exhumed and broken open, the body inserted into the dripping sack and carried between them to the gig. One mounted to keep it in its place, and the other, taking the horse by the mouth, groped along the wall and bush until they reached the wider road by the Fisher's Tryst. Here was a faint, diffuse radiancy, which they hailed like daylight. By that they pushed the horse to a good pace and began to rattle along merrily in the direction of the town. They had both been wetted to the skin during their operations, and now, as the gig jumped among the deep ruts, the thing that stood propped between them fell now upon one and now upon the other. At every repetition of the horrid contact, each instinctively repelled it with the greater haste, and the process, natural although it was, began to tell upon the nerves of the companions. MacFarlane made some ill-favoured jest about the farmer's wife, but it came hollowly from his lips, and was allowed to drop in silence. Still their unnatural burden bumped from side to side, and now the head would be laid, as if in confidence, upon their shoulders, and now the drenching sackcloth would flap icily about their faces. A creeping chill began to possess the soul of Fettes. He peered at the bundle, and it seemed somehow larger than at first. All over the countryside, and from every degree of distance, the farm dogs accompanied their passage with tragic ululations, and it grew and grew upon his mind that some unnatural miracle had been accomplished, that some nameless change had befallen the dead body, and that it was in fear of their unholy burden that the dogs were howling.
This is not a woman.
It was a woman when we put her in.
Hold that lamp. I must see her face.
And as Fettes took the lamp, his companion untied the fastenings of the sack and drew down the cover from the head. The light fell very clear upon the dark, well-moulded features and smooth-shaven cheeks of a too familiar countenance, often beheld in dreams of both of these young men. A wild yell rang up into the night. Each leaped from his own side into the roadway. The lamp fell, broke, and was extinguished, and the horse, terrified by this unusual commotion, bounded and went off toward Edinburgh at a gallop, bearing along with it, sole occupant of the gig, the body of the dead and long dissected Grey.
Roddy!
Hates me. Roddy hates me. Roddy hates me.
Oh yes, Toddy, you do.
for the week. Thank you for listening. If you want to hear more episodes coming up in the future, then definitely add the Tea and Terror to your playlist on Spotify or Apple Podcast. You can also check out the show on my Wicked Majesty channel. This is Keya, and I will catch you next week. Same time, same place. Have a good night. Until next time, sleep tight, don't let the shadows bite.